She didn't leave in anger. She didn't slam doors or write letters explaining why. There were no dramatic confrontations, no final speeches rehearsed in the mirror at 3 in the morning. One day she simply wasn't there anymore. And that quiet disappearance, that gentle extraction of herself from everyone's life, shook the foundation of their world more than any argument ever could. Maybe you've felt it too. That moment when staying becomes more painful than the fear of leaving. When every breath in that space, that relationship, that version of yourself feels like suffocation. When you realize that the life you're living isn't yours at all, but a carefully constructed performance designed to meet everyone's needs but your own. This isn't a story about bitterness or revenge. This is about something far more profound, something the great psychologist Carl Jung spent his lifetime exploring: the conscious decision to become whole. The terrifying necessary journey of individuation, where the soul finally says enough and begins the long walk home to itself. There's a concept in Jungian psychology called the persona, the mask we wear to navigate social expectations and collective demands. It's the version of ourselves we present to the world, the role we play so convincingly that sometimes we forget we're acting at all. For the empath, this persona becomes a prison. They become the one who always stays, who always cares, who always fixes what's broken in everyone around them. They become so skilled at holding space for others that they forget they need space too. And then there's the self-capital S, the true essence of who we are beneath all the conditioning and performance. The authentic core that whispers in the quiet moments, reminding us we're dying a slow death in someone else's story. For years, decades, sometimes the empath ignores this whisper. They tell themselves it's selfish to listen. They convince themselves that their worth is measured by how much they can endure, how much they can carry, how little they can need. But the self doesn't give up. It speaks louder, through exhaustion, through physical illness, through dreams that wake you up gasping, through that hollow feeling in your chest that no amount of service to others can fill. The breaking point isn't dramatic betrayal or a single catastrophic event. It's the accumulated exhaustion of the soul, the final straw, that isn't a straw at all, but the realization that there will always be one more straw unless you walk away. Walking away wasn't abandonment. It was the first act of self-love after years of self-erasure. It was the moment the empath finally understood what generations of conditioning had hidden from view: that leaving doesn't make you cruel, it makes you conscious. That choosing yourself isn't selfish, it's the foundation of psychological health. That silence after years of explaining and justifying and apologizing for taking up space can be the most powerful statement of all. If you're watching this, you might be that empath who left. You might be standing at the threshold right now, bags packed in your mind, if not in your hands, wondering if you have permission to go. Or perhaps you walked away months or years ago, and you're still questioning whether you had the right. Let me tell you something that might change everything: individuation. The process of becoming who you truly are requires separation from the collective. It demands that you step out of the roles that were never meant for you, even if everyone around you, beneficiaries of those roles, objects to your departure. What you're about to discover in this journey will change how you see your departure forever. Not as failure or cruelty or weakness, but as the bravest act of your life. The moment you chose growth over comfort, truth over performance, self over servitude. And if this already resonates with something deep in your soul, something you've been afraid to name, please hit that like button and subscribe. Your support helps this message reach other empaths who are still wondering if they're allowed to walk away, who need permission they'll never receive from the people they're leaving, who need to hear that their liberation matters more than someone else's convenience. The empath's journey doesn't begin with the departure. It begins decades earlier, in a childhood where they learned the most dangerous equation of their life. Your worth equals how much you can carry for others. Somewhere in those formative years, a template was created, a blueprint for survival. that required the systematic erasure of self. Maybe it was a parent who couldn't regulate their own emotions, so the child learned to become a barometer, reading every shift in mood, every tightening of jaw or change in tone. Maybe it was a household where conflict was terrifying, so the child became a peacemaker, absorbing tension like a sponge, wringing themselves out in private. Maybe it was a sibling who struggled, and the empath child instinctively became the easy one, the one who needed nothing, the one who made everything easier for everyone else. In Jungian terms, this is where the shadow begins to form. The shadow isn't evil or dark in a moral sense. It's simply the repository for every part of ourselves we've been taught is unacceptable. For the empath child, entire categories of human experience get relegated to this unconscious realm. Anger becomes dangerous, so it gets buried. Boundaries become selfish, so they dissolve. Personal desires become burdensome, so they're postponed indefinitely. The child learns that their survival, their lovability, their very right to exist, depends on making themselves smaller, quieter, more accommodating. This becomes the sacred wound, the original injury that shapes everything that follows. The empath develops hypervigilance to others' emotional states as a survival mechanism. They can read a room the way others read books. They can sense disappointment before it's expressed, anticipate needs before they're spoken, manage crises before they fully form. It's a superpower born from trauma, a gift wrapped around a curse. Picture this child, maybe 7 or 8 years old, coming home from school, excited about a small victory, a good grade, or a kind word from a teacher. But the moment they walk through the door, they sense the heaviness in the air. Mom had a bad day at work. Dad is silent at the dinner table. Instantly, instinctively, the child shifts. The excitement gets tucked away. They become the emotional support, asking gentle questions, offering help, making themselves useful. Their joy, their moment, their emotional reality becomes irrelevant in the face of someone else's need. And everyone praises this. What a mature child. What an old soul. So empathetic, so understanding. The reinforcement is powerful and complete. The empath learns this is love. This is how you matter. This is your purpose. This pattern doesn't end with childhood. It intensifies in adulthood. The empath finds themselves drawn to relationships with people who need fixing or saving. There's something magnetic about someone else's brokenness because it gives the empath purpose, value, a reason to exist. They become the therapist friend, the reliable partner, the family member everyone calls in crisis. They become so good at emotional fusion, at dissolving boundaries, until they don't know where they end and others begin, that their identity becomes inseparable from their utility. The invisible labor multiplies. Managing everyone's emotions while suppressing your own becomes a full-time job. You're the one who remembers everyone's preferences, anticipates everyone's needs, smooths over conflicts, absorbs complaints, offers solutions. You become the emotional shock absorber for everyone around you, and the damage happens internally where no one can see it. There's a particularly insidious form. This takes the martyr complex. The empath begins to confuse self-sacrifice with love. They tell themselves that real love means putting yourself last, that healthy relationships require one person to carry more than the other, that if you're not exhausted, you're not trying hard enough. The identity becomes wrapped around suffering for others, and any attempt to step back feels like betrayal. Here's a recognition line that might hit hard. You became so good at reading the room, you forgot how to feel yourself in it. You could tell when someone else was hungry, tired, sad, or overwhelmed, but you couldn't name your own basic needs. You advocated for everyone except yourself. You held space for everyone except yourself. You showed up for everyone except yourself. And slowly, imperceptibly, you disappeared. The erosion happens through accumulation. Not one dramatic betrayal, though those might occur too. but primarily through chronic emotional dismissal. Every time someone interrupted your story to tell theirs, every time your pain was minimized while you were expected to prioritize theirs, every time you said yes when your soul screamed no and no one noticed the violence you were doing to yourself, every time you set a boundary and someone trampled it and you let them because holding boundaries felt harder than just absorbing more. The phrases become familiar, predictable crazy-making. You're too sensitive. You're overreacting. You're being dramatic. Don't be so selfish. After all I've done for you. You're changing and not in a good way. Why can't you just let it go? Why do you have to make everything about you? These words land like small cuts, each one insignificant alone, but collectively hemorrhaging your sense of reality. You start to question your own perceptions. Maybe you are too sensitive. Maybe your needs are unreasonable. Maybe you're expecting too much. This is gaslighting, though you might not name it as such. It's the systematic erosion of your trust in your own experience. The empath, already predisposed to doubt themselves and prioritize others, becomes trapped in a hall of mirrors where they can no longer distinguish their truth from others' projections. In psychological terms, what's happening is a pressure cooker effect. The repressed self, all those denied needs and unexpressed feelings and unmet desires, builds energy in the unconscious. It has to go somewhere. It manifests as physical symptoms, exhaustion that sleep doesn't fix, mysterious pains, autoimmune conditions, chronic tension. The body keeps the score when the conscious mind refuses to acknowledge the cost. It manifests as emotional numbness. The empath who once felt everything suddenly feels nothing. The empathy they were praised for becomes a burden they can't carry. They go through motions, perform their role, but something essential has gone dark inside. And paradoxically, this terrifies them more than feeling everything did. Because if they're not the empath, the feeler, the one who cares, then who are they? The unconscious sends warnings. Dreams of death, not violent, but peaceful. Dreams of disappearing, of being invisible, of walking away from everything and no one noticing. Dreams of drowning, of being buried alive, of trying to speak and no sound coming out. These aren't suicidal ideation in the clinical sense. They're the psyche's desperate attempt to communicate this version of you is dying. Something has to change. And then comes the fantasy, not of ending your life, but of just not being responsible anymore, of waking up with no obligations, no expectations, no one needing anything from you, of being in a space where you don't have to manage anyone's emotions, don't have to anticipate anyone's needs, don't have to make yourself smaller so someone else can feel bigger. This fantasy becomes so vivid, so consuming, that it becomes impossible to ignore. The moment of clarity arrives differently for everyone. For some, it's a single sentence from someone they've poured everything into. What have you done for me lately? For others, it's the realization that they can recount intimate details of everyone else's life, but can't remember the last time someone asked how they were really doing. For others still, it's looking in the mirror and not recognizing the person staring back. But the content of the moment matters less than the recognition itself. I am dying while everyone around me is thriving on my depletion. I am the battery everyone else recharges from, and no one is asking if I need charging too. This life I'm living, this self I'm performing, isn't sustainable. And more than that, it isn't mine. That's when the empath begins to understand that walking away isn't an act of aggression. It's an act of resurrection. The decision to leave doesn't arrive like a lightning bolt. It builds like a storm you've been watching. Gather on the horizon for years, hoping it might dissipate, knowing it won't. The empath stands at an impossible crossroads, feeling the weight of two equally terrifying options: stay and die slowly, so gradually that no one will notice, including yourself, or leave and face the unknown. This is the internal war. self-preservation battles ingrained guilt with the ferocity of armies clashing. On one side, every message you've internalized about what good people do. Good people stay. Good people work it out. Good people don't give up on relationships. Good people put others first. On the other side, a quieter but more insistent voice that sounds like truth. The voice that asks, at what cost, for how much longer, and what happens when there's nothing left of you to give? What you're experiencing has a name in Jungian psychology. It's called the dark night of the soul, and it's a necessary passage. The ego, that constructed sense of self built on all your roles and relationships and identities, has to die before something more authentic can be born. This death feels catastrophic because it is catastrophic. You're not just leaving a situation. You're dismantling the very structure of who you thought you were. The threshold moment arrives when the pain of staying finally exceeds the fear of leaving. When you realize that the worst-case scenario of departure still feels more survivable than another day of self-abandonment. This isn't dramatic. It's exhausting. It's the moment you finally understand that no amount of trying harder, loving more, giving deeper, will change the fundamental dynamic. You cannot force people to see you. You cannot earn consideration. You cannot sacrifice your way into mattering. The day you choose yourself, it feels like the cruelest thing you've ever done. The guilt is overwhelming, suffocating, relentless. But here's what the connection between Carl Jung, empath, and personal development teaches us. This guilt is the death rattle of your conditioning, not evidence of your wrongdoing. It's the old programming throwing everything it has at keeping you compliant. Your entire system was designed to prioritize others. Of course, choosing yourself feels like betrayal. That's how deep the conditioning goes. The first sacred no is the hardest. Maybe it's declining to manage someone's crisis. Maybe it's not answering the phone when you know it's someone demanding your energy. Maybe it's saying you need space without explaining why or apologizing for needing it. That no trembles in your throat. Your hands shake as you voice it or type it, or simply hold it silently. But you do it, and the world doesn't end. The relationship might end and the dynamic definitely shifts, but you survive. That survival is information. It tells you that boundaries won't kill you, though violating them might. What walking away looks like varies for each empath. Sometimes it's physical departure, packing boxes and driving away from a home that never felt like home. Sometimes it's emotional withdrawal, still present in body, but no longer available as the emotional dumping ground. Sometimes it's psychological separation, maintaining practical connection while completely divesting your sense of self from their opinion of you. But there's one element that tends to be consistent: the silence. After years of explaining, justifying, defending, pleading, the empath stops talking. They don't provide the closure everyone suddenly demands. They don't engage in the circular conversations designed to reel them back. They simply step back. And this silence, this refusal to participate in their own diminishment anymore, is what truly shocks people. Here's the part that hurts the most. The truth that needs to be spoken plainly: they don't miss you. They miss what you did for them. They miss the function you performed, the role you played. The convenience of your constant availability. This isn't cynical, it's observed reality. Notice how when you pull back, the concern isn't about your well-being. It's about how your absence affects them. The question isn't, "Are you okay?" but, "Why are you doing this to us?" The withdrawal of projections is a powerful Jungian concept. For years, you've carried not just your own psychological material, but everyone else's too. You've been the screen on which they projected their needs, their expectations, their unprocessed emotional content. When you remove yourself as that screen, they're forced to deal with their own material. This is uncomfortable for them. This is why they resist. The immediate aftermath feels like free fall. The guilt intensifies before it subsides. Am I selfish? Am I cruel? Am I the narcissist they're suddenly calling me? The loneliness is acute. You've spent so long surrounded by people needing you that solitude feels like punishment. The silence that was liberation 5 minutes ago becomes deafening. Doubts creep in like water through cracks. Maybe I should go back. Maybe I overreacted. Maybe I'm throwing away something valuable because I can't handle normal relationship challenges. This doubt is predictable, necessary even. The individuation process, becoming psychologically whole and autonomous, requires this period of discomfort. You're in the birth canal of the self, and birth is never comfortable. You're shedding an identity that took decades to construct. Of course it feels wrong. Of course every part of your conditioning screams at you to return to familiar patterns. But underneath the chaos, if you can sit still enough to feel it, something ancient and true begins to awaken. It starts as a whisper, this is right. This is necessary. This is your life claiming itself back. There are moments, brief at first, where the peace breaks through. You wake up without dread. You move through a day without managing anyone else's emotional state. You feel light in your body in a way you'd forgotten was possible. Then comes the shadow integration phase. This is where the real work begins. All those parts of yourself you relegated to the unconscious because they seemed unacceptable start demanding recognition. Your anger arrives first, and it's not polite or rational or proportionate. It's the rage you never let yourself feel, accumulated over years of swallowing injustice. You're angry at them for taking so much. You're angry at yourself for giving it. You're angry at the world for teaching you that your worth was measured in service. Let yourself feel it. This anger isn't evidence of bitterness or unforgiveness. It's proof that you're finally telling the truth about what happened. Anger is the guardian of boundaries, the emotion that says, this isn't okay. You've spent your life overriding this guardian. Now it gets its say. You might be surprised by the intensity. You might worry it makes you a bad person. It doesn't. It makes you human. It makes you honest. The anger will move through you if you let it, teaching you where your limits are, showing you what you'll never accept again. This is healthy anger, righteous anger, anger that's been waiting decades for permission to exist. Your boundaries emerge next. Real ones, not the theoretical kind you've tried to set while immediately apologizing for them. These boundaries don't bend. They don't come with explanations or justifications. They simply are. No, I won't do that. No, that doesn't work for me. No, I'm not available for that. Each one feels revolutionary because it is. You're rewriting the fundamental terms of your existence. Your desires surface tentative at first. What do you actually want? Not what would be helpful to others. Not what would keep peace or make you more likable. What do you want? This question might stump you initially. You've spent so long postponing your desires that you might not even know how to identify them anymore. Start small. What do you want for dinner? What do you want to do this Saturday? What do you want your life to feel like? The paradox becomes clear. You had to seem cruel to finally be kind to yourself. You had to disappoint everyone else to stop disappointing the one person who's been with you through everything yourself. The conscious makes the unconscious conscious, integrating all these shadow elements, owning every disowned part. It's uncomfortable work. It's also the only path to wholeness. And then comes the external backlash. The world doesn't celebrate your individuation. The collective resists it because your growth forces everyone else to examine their own lives. Your family might stage interventions. Your friends might distance themselves. Your former partner might oscillate between love bombing and character assassination. The smear campaign is predictable. You've changed, they say, like it's an accusation. The subtext is clear: you're not as controllable anymore. You're not as available. You're not playing your role. And yes, you have changed. That's the entire point. But they frame change as betrayal, because your old self served them better. The guilt trips arrive systematically. Holidays become weaponized. Shared memories get distorted into evidence of your cruelty. They'll invoke every sacrifice they made for you, real or imagined, while conveniently forgetting every sacrifice you made for them. The narrative flips entirely. Suddenly, you're the villain in a story they're telling, and the speed with which you get recast is dizzying. Sometimes the backlash comes dressed as concern. We're worried about you. You're not yourself. We just want the old you back. This masked concern is particularly insidious because it sounds loving. But pay attention to what they're actually saying. They want the old you, the depleted you, the compliant you. The version of you that made your life smaller so theirs could be bigger. That's not concern, that's control attempting to reassert itself. Here's the wisdom that carries you through. The collective resists individuation because it forces everyone to grow up. Your departure from the assigned role means they can no longer avoid their own responsibility. Your boundaries mean they have to develop their own emotional regulation. Your absence means they have to fill their own needs. This is good for them long term, but short term, it's uncomfortable. And rather than sit with that discomfort, they'll try to make you responsible for it. The liberation comes in stages. First, when you stop explaining yourself. Then when you stop feeling guilty for not explaining yourself. Then when you realize that their opinion of you is none of your business. And finally, powerfully, when they stop reaching out and you realize they never wanted you. They wanted your function. They wanted access to your resources, emotional and otherwise. When that access is revoked, the relationship evaporates because there was no relationship, only transaction. This realization is both devastating and freeing. Devastating because it confirms what you suspected but hoped wasn't true. Freeing because you can finally stop trying to earn something from people who never intended to give it. You can stop performing. You can stop hoping that if you just find the right words or make the right gesture, they'll finally see you. They won't. They're not capable. And that's not your responsibility to fix. In the aftermath of the crossing, there's a period of profound solitude. Not loneliness, though it might feel like that at first. Solitude. The difference is crucial. Loneliness is the pain of isolation. Solitude is the healing that happens in chosen aloneness. For the first time in decades, you're not performing, not explaining, not managing anyone's emotional state but your own. The quiet feels strange. There's no one texting demands disguised as needs. No one calling with crises that somehow always become your responsibility. No one's mood dictating your day. The absence of chaos is so unfamiliar that you might initially feel anxious, like you're forgetting something important. You are forgetting something. You're forgetting to abandon yourself. This solitude becomes a sanctuary. In the stillness, you start to hear yourself again. That voice that got drowned out by everyone else's needs begins to speak. Softly at first, tentatively, as if not quite believing it's safe to emerge. But gradually, with more confidence, more clarity. This voice knows things. It knows what you actually think, not what you've been trained to say. It knows what you actually feel, not what you've learned to perform. It knows who you actually are, beneath all the roles. The question surfaces maybe for the first time with genuine curiosity rather than panic. Who am I when I'm not solving someone else's crisis? When I'm not the emotional support, the problem solver, the caretaker? When my value isn't measured by my utility? Strip away all the roles and relationships and responsibilities. Who exists underneath? This exploration starts simply. Morning coffee without immediately checking your phone for messages requiring your attention. Walks without guilt about not being available. Sleep without anxiety, dreams about managing everyone's expectations. You notice what you actually enjoy when no one's watching, when there's no one to impress or appease. Maybe it's silence. Maybe it's music you stopped listening to because someone else didn't like it. Maybe it's hobbies you abandoned because they were selfish uses of time. The individuation process that Carl Jung, Empath, and personal development teachings describe is exactly this. The journey inward to meet the authentic self, capital S. Not the persona you constructed for survival, but the core essence of who you are. This isn't a quick journey. There's no weekend workshop that completes it. It's gradual, sometimes frustrating, often surprising. You discover that you like things you thought you hated because you associated them with obligation. You discover you're capable of things you never attempted because you were too busy enabling everyone else's attempts. You discover preferences and opinions that don't match your old identity, and you get to decide whether to honor them without considering how it affects anyone else first. For the first time in your memory, you're not afraid of your own company. You're not rushing to fill the space with people or noise or projects, because sitting with yourself feels tolerable. More than tolerable, actually pleasant. You become interesting to yourself. Whole conversations happen internally that don't revolve around problem-solving or planning or worrying about others. The reclamation of energy becomes tangible. You can map where your energy was going, trace the hemorrhaging. So much went to managing others' emotions, so much to anticipating and preventing their discomfort, so much to making yourself smaller so they could feel bigger, so much to performing the version of yourself they preferred, rather than the version that's actually true. Now that energy returns, gradually at first, like water filling a depleted well. You notice you can complete tasks without exhaustion, can have difficult days without collapse, can experience disappointment without it destabilizing everything. The resilience you thought you'd lost was never gone. It was just being directed entirely outward while you ran on empty. The new boundaries aren't negotiations anymore. They're clear, firm, guilt-free statements of what works and doesn't work for you. No is a complete sentence. I need space doesn't require a time frame or explanation. That doesn't work for me doesn't need to be followed by an apology. These boundaries feel radical at first because you're so accustomed to contorting yourself to accommodate others. But with practice, they become natural. They become non-negotiable. Your values shift. When you're not living for external approval, what actually matters? You reassess everything. Relationships, career, where you live, how you spend time, what you pursue. The life you were living was built on foundations of should, supposed to, expected to. Now you're building on foundations of want, need, choose. The architecture looks completely different. The practice becomes daily, moment by moment. Saying no without explanation. Saying yes without obligation. Allowing disappointment without taking responsibility for it. Stating preferences without minimizing them. Feeling your feelings without immediately trying to fix or transcend them. Occupying space without apologizing for it. This is the balance that Jungian psychology describes as the union of opposites. Soft heart, strong spine. Empathy without enmeshment. Compassion without sacrifice of self. Openness without porousness. You learn you can care about someone without taking responsibility for their emotions. You can love someone without erasing yourself for them. You can be kind without being available for exploitation. The sorting happens naturally. Some relationships survive your transformation. These are the people who reach out with genuine care rather than transactional need, who respect your boundaries without making you feel guilty for having them, who celebrate your growth rather than resent it. These relationships deepen because they're based on authenticity rather than your performance of compliance. Other relationships reveal themselves as conditional. They wanted you the way you were because that version served them. Your growth threatens the dynamic they benefited from. These people might try to guilt you back into the old role. They might withdraw entirely. Either way, the message is clear: they preferred your dysfunction because it made their lives easier. The new standards are simple but revolutionary. Reciprocity relationships where care flows both directions. Respect where your needs and boundaries are honored without punishment. Recognition where you're seen as a full person, not a function. These aren't unreasonable standards. They're baseline requirements for healthy relationships. But they're standards the old you would have considered too demanding, too selfish, too much. Letting go of relationships built on your compliance is grief work. Even knowing they weren't serving you, even understanding they were built on your self-abandonment, there's loss. You grieve the time invested, the hope that things would change, the version of connection you thought you had. Let yourself grieve. That's not regression. That's honoring the cost of your liberation. The healthy connections that form now look different. The people attracted to this version of you are attracted to your authenticity, not your usefulness. They don't need you to be fixed or to fix them. They meet you as equals. Conversations have breathing room. There's space for both people's experiences. When you share something difficult, they don't make it about themselves or minimize it or immediately try to solve it. They just hold space. And you realize this is what you've been giving for years without receiving. Real relationships, the kind worth having, happen between two whole individuals. Not between one person and their shadow, not between one person and their projected needs, but between two integrated selves capable of intimacy without fusion. This is possible now in a way it never was when you were half-present, depleted, performing. Something unexpected emerges in this space of reconstruction creativity. All that energy you were pouring into others flows back toward you, and you discover capacity you'd forgotten you had. The dreams you deferred start resurfacing. Maybe it's art or writing or music you abandoned because there was never time. Maybe it's a business idea you shelved because you were too busy supporting everyone else's dreams. Maybe it's healing modalities you felt drawn to but never pursued. You start projects. Small at first, then more ambitious. You give yourself permission to be a beginner, to fail to create things that matter to you, even if they serve no one else. The inner work you've been doing manifests as outer expression. The integration of shadow and self, the reclamation of disowned parts, translates into tangible creation. There's something deeply satisfying about creating from a full cup rather than an empty one. When you were depleted, any creative impulse got redirected towards solving others' problems or suppressed entirely as frivolous. Now creativity flows naturally because you finally have energy available for it. You might paint, write poetry, start a garden launch, a business, learn an instrument. The specific expression matters less than the fact that you're finally claiming space for your own generative power. This isn't selfish indulgence. This is soul expression. This is what happens when a person stops betraying their own gifts. Your voice changes. Not literally, though. Sometimes that happens too. But the way you speak your truth, without softening it for others' comfort, without preemptive apologies or qualifiers, without making yourself smaller so your words land more gently. You say what's true and let it stand there. This feels uncomfortable at first because you're so accustomed to managing everyone's reactions to your truth. But discomfort fades. What remains is the relief of finally being honest. The purpose shifts fundamentally. For years, your purpose was fixing others, making their lives easier, their burdens lighter, their emotions more manageable. That purpose was noble sounding, but ultimately depleting. because it placed your meaning outside yourself. Now purpose becomes internal, creating your own meaning rather than deriving it from your utility to others. This shift extends into spiritual territory. Beyond the psychological frameworks, though they provide crucial understanding, there's a soul dimension to this journey. Something about walking away from everything familiar and facing yourself honestly opens doors that were previously closed. You might find yourself drawn to practices or philosophies you never considered before. Meditation, contemplation, nature immersion, creative expression as prayer. There's a deeper why underneath all the psychological explanations. You're not just healing childhood wounds or establishing healthy boundaries, though you're doing those things. You're answering a soul-level call to become who you were meant to be before the world told you who you should be. This is sacred work, ancient work, the kind of transformation that ripples beyond your individual life. Every spiritual tradition speaks of this journey in different languages. The dark night of the soul, the hero's journey, the death and resurrection, the descent into the underworld, the chrysalis. You're living an archetypal story, and that's why it resonates so deeply. You're not just changing your circumstances. You're participating in a pattern of transformation that's been unfolding in human consciousness since we first became aware of ourselves. Your personal journey connects you to something universal, something that transcends your individual story while remaining intimately yours. The archetypal pattern emerges. You recognize yourself in a story as old as consciousness itself. The wounded healer who must heal themselves before they can authentically heal others. You had to break before you could understand wholeness. Had to lose yourself before you could find yourself. Had to walk through your own darkness before you could hold space for others in theirs without losing yourself in the process. Compassion arrives, and it's different from the empathy you've always had. That empathy was often about emotional fusion, feeling what others felt, absorbing their pain. This compassion has clearer boundaries. You can witness suffering without taking it on, can offer support without taking responsibility, can hold space without emptying yourself. You're compassionate with yourself first, which makes your compassion for others sustainable rather than depleting. You develop compassion for them too, the people you walked away from. Not the kind that excuses their behavior or makes you want to return, but understanding that they too are acting from their wounds, their conditioning, their limited consciousness. They too are doing the best they can with the tools they have. That doesn't mean you need to be in relationship with them. Compassion doesn't require proximity. You can wish them well from a great distance. And compassion for the whole process. The painful journey that brought you here. The years you spent lost in their needs. The moment of choosing yourself that felt like betrayal. The grief and doubt and guilt and rage of the transformation. All of it was necessary. It was. All of it was part of the path. You wouldn't be who you're becoming without who you were. The forgiveness work begins, though not the way people expect. You're not forgiving them so they feel better or to reconcile the relationship. You're forgiving, releasing the weight of resentment so you can be free. Holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting them to die. Forgiveness isn't saying what they did was okay. It's saying you're not going to let what they did continue to define you. Your visions become clear when you look into your own heart, not when you're looking at their potential or trying to see yourself through their eyes. When you're willing to face yourself, honestly shadows and all the path forward illuminates. You start to see what's possible for your life. Not based on what you've been told is possible, but based on what feels true when you're quiet enough to hear your own wisdom. A transformation this deep changes everything about who you are. not in the sense of becoming someone new, but in the sense of finally becoming who you've always been, beneath all the conditioning and performance. The identity shift is seismic. You're not the people pleaser anymore, though you're still kind. You're not the doormat, though you're still compassionate. You're not the martyr, though you still care deeply. You've become discerning. That's the word that captures it best. Discerning about where you invest your energy, who you allow into your inner circle, what you accept as normal in relationships. Discerning doesn't mean closed or bitter or untrusting. It means you've learned to read people's actions rather than their words, to notice patterns rather than excuses, to trust your gut when something feels off rather than overriding your instincts to give endless chances. The shift is from people-pleasing to self-honoring. You still consider others, still show up with care and respect, but not at the cost of yourself. Not in ways that require you to betray your own needs or violate your own boundaries. Not in ways that make you responsible for their emotional regulation. You're kind, but your kindness has boundaries. You're generous, but your generosity doesn't include yourself as the offering. There's a power in knowing you can survive your own decisions. Every time you were told you couldn't handle it, that you'd regret walking away, that you needed them more than they needed you, you've proven that false. You handled it. You're still here. You not only survived, you're thriving in ways that were impossible when you were depleted by constant giving. The wholeness that Carl Jung empath and personal development frameworks describe becomes lived experience. You've integrated your persona and shadow and self. The mask you wore isn't discarded, but rather chosen consciously when needed. The shadow parts you repressed are acknowledged and integrated. The self, that authentic core, guides your decisions now instead of external expectations. And here's the truth that solidifies everything: you didn't lose your empathy. You learned where it belongs. Empathy without boundaries was destroying you. It made you responsible for everyone's feelings, available for everyone's needs, open to everyone's demands. That's not empathy, that's enmeshment. True empathy, healthy empathy, feels what others feel without taking it on as your responsibility. Holds space without collapsing into the same space. Cares without carrying. Never looking back isn't a statement made in anger or pride. It's a statement made in clarity. You finally know your worth, and it's not negotiable anymore. You're not available for relationships that require you to diminish yourself. You're not interested in connections that only work when you're overgiving. You're done explaining your boundaries to people who refuse to respect them. You're finished trying to earn consideration from people who view you as a resource. The closure you were waiting for, the apology or acknowledgement or understanding from them, you give that to yourself now. You don't need them to validate your experience. You don't need them to admit they took advantage. You don't need them to finally see you. You see yourself. That's enough. That's everything. This freedom, living without the need to prove or explain or justify, is unlike anything you've experienced. You exist in your own right, not as someone's appendage or support system or emotional crutch. Your existence justifies itself. Your presence doesn't require preamble or apology. You take up space because you're here, because you're human, because you matter inherently. The privilege of a lifetime, as Jung understood, is becoming who you truly are. Not who they needed you to be, not who you thought you should be. Who you actually are when all the false identities are stripped away. This is your privilege. This is your birthright. And walking away from everything that prevented you from claiming it was the most necessary thing you've ever done. Your standard now is simple and unshakable. You'd rather be alone than be the old version of yourself ever again. Solitude doesn't scare you anymore. You know what companionship costs when it requires self-abandonment. You know the price of being in relationships that only function when you're dysfunctional. You won't pay it anymore Not for family, not for friendship, not for romance, not for anyone. This isn't cold or closed or bitter. It's self-preservation perfected. It's the natural consequence of learning that your peace matters more than their comfort, that your authenticity matters more than their approval, that your wholeness matters more than their convenience. The ripple effect of your departure extends beyond what you can see. Your liberation didn't just free you. It created a hairline fracture in everyone who witnessed it. Some will seal that fracture, quickly defend against it, return to familiar patterns. But others will feel that crack widen. They'll start questioning their own cages, wondering if they too have permission to walk away from what's slowly killing them. You become an example without trying to. Your very existence as someone who chose themselves, who survived the choice and thrived after it gives others permission. Permission they won't get from the people who benefit from their compliance. Permission they're afraid to give themselves. Your courage becomes their possibility. The legacy you're building is profound. You're breaking generational patterns of self-abandonment. Maybe you grew up watching a parent sacrifice everything, and you learned that's what love looks like. Now you're showing a different possibility, that boundaries and love coexist, that self-respect and care for others aren't mutually exclusive, that choosing yourself doesn't make you selfish, it makes you whole. This matters beyond your individual healing. Individual transformation transforms the collective, even if the collective resists it initially. Every person who individuates, who becomes psychologically whole and autonomous, raises the baseline for what's possible in human relationships. Your refusal to accept crumbs raises the standard for what you deserve. And when you raise your standard, you invite everyone around you to rise too, though many will resent the invitation. If you're still in that space of wondering if you can leave, let this reach you clearly: you can. If the leaving you need is physical, emotional, or psychological, you can do it. You're not trapped by their need for you. You're not obligated by history or shared experience or what you've invested. You're not required to set yourself on fire to keep anyone else warm. The fear is real. Walking away from the known into the unknown is terrifying, even when the known is killing you. The guilt will be intense because you've been trained to feel responsible for everyone's feelings. The doubt will whisper that you're making a mistake, that you'll regret it, that you're overreacting. But on the other side of that fear and guilt and doubt is a version of your life where you finally get to be the main character in your own story. Walking away isn't the end. It's your beginning. The first chapter in a story where you matter as much as everyone you've been taking care of, where your needs are as valid as theirs, where your life belongs to you. The most important meeting is the one you have with yourself. And sometimes, often, that meeting requires everyone else to leave the room. They won't leave willingly because your availability serves them. You have to leave. You have to create the space where you can finally hear yourself think, feel yourself feel, be yourself without performance or apology. When you walk away, you're not leaving them behind. You're finally catching up to yourself. The real you has been waiting patiently for years, decades maybe, for you to notice they exist, for you to prioritize them, for you to come home to yourself. This is that moment. This is that permission. This is that truth. Your liberation matters. You matter, not for what you can do for others, but for who you are when you're not doing anything for anyone. The empath who walks away isn't cruel. They're conscious. They're courageous. They're choosing life over slow death. And they never look back, because forward is where everything they've been missing is waiting. Peace is waiting. Wholeness is waiting. A life built on truth instead of performance is waiting. They're waiting for themselves. If this resonates with something deep in your soul, something you've been afraid to name or claim, share this with another empath who needs permission they'll never get from the people they're leaving. Subscribe for more content about transformation and healing and becoming whole. And remember this, above everything else, you're not abandoning anyone. You're finally showing up for the one person who's been with you through everything and deserves your care most yourself. The empath stands at the window, now looking out at dawn. Shoulders relaxed, slight smile playing at the corners of their mouth. Not looking back at what was, but forward at what's possible. The past is behind them, honored but not commanding. The future is uncertain, but theirs to create. And the present, this moment right here, is the first moment in years where they're fully, completely, authentically present to their own life. There's a quality to this presence that's difficult to describe, but unmistakable when you feel it. It's the difference between existing and living, between performing and being, between survival and thriving. The empath who walked away has discovered something most people never find, that peace isn't the absence of conflict, it's the presence of integrity. That wholeness isn't about being perfect, it's about being real. That home isn't a place or a person, it's the state of being authentically yourself without apology. They breathe differently now, sleep differently, move through the world differently. There's a groundedness that comes from finally knowing your own worth. A quiet confidence that comes from surviving your own becoming. They're not waiting for validation anymore, not seeking approval, not trying to prove anything to anyone. They simply are. And that simple existence, unadorned by performance or explanation, is the most radical act they've ever committed. That's not an ending. That's a beginning. And it's yours for the taking.